Alright guys, the topic in aural theory today is seventh chords. Now we've already learned about the type of seventh chord called the dominant seventh, which is to say the sol ti re fa family. We learned about the sol 753 chord, the ti 653 chord, the re 643 chord, and the fa 642 chord. All behaving in different contexts, different means, with the different zans in the bass. Sol 753 that has the sol do, bossy zans in the bass, or sol la in a deceptive resolution. Re 643, passing 643 chord likes to go down re do, re mi. T65, that's our ti do, there's our cantizans in the bass. And fa mi, the passo indietro, the altizans in the bass. And so we had that whole family of chords. As it turns out, most seventh chords behave very similarly to the dominant seventh chord, without the pull of the ti do, of course, but they tend to resolve similarly. And rather than think of inversions, think of your functional bass as being there are rules for how dissonances like to resolve. So let's go to the whiteboard and talk over how most seventh chords resolve. There we go. All right, so what we learned, and we're going to use our family of sol ti re fa chords as examples. We learned that the sol 753 tends to resolve down to do 5-3, which is to say that the bass jumped down, sol to do, sol fa mi re do, that's down a fifth, or sol la ti do, up a fourth. Down a fifth or up a fourth. And it turns out this is how 753 chords behave in general. And so the second most common 753 chord probably is the re 753. You know this from the tetractous mode, our do, re, sol, do mode of the tetractous scale. This is second mode. And it likes, bass jumps down by fifth or up by fourth. And so this would go to a sol 5-3. And this works pretty much for any 7-5-3 chord, assuming that that 5-3 is a real fifth, a stable fifth. And so if I hear a 7-5-3 anywhere, if I heard, for example, let's say I heard a mi 7-5-3, I already know where that's going to go to. I already know where it's going to go to because that bass is going to jump down a fifth or up a fourth. Mi re do is going to jump down to a la 5-3 chord. And so we have this is the dissonance of the 5-3. I can take a nice stable 5-3 chord and I transform it into a 7-5-3 chord. And what does it do? The bass is going to jump down by fifth or up by fourth. And it's going to land on another chord of the fifth. That chord of the fifth could be another seventh chord, like that, 7-5-3, in which case it would jump down and we would get this chain of falling fifth, seventh chords. Very, very common chord progression. Jazz is kind of built on that, if you will. Or it can land on a 5-3, and then we've got a stable point where we can kind of stop for a while. And so most, 7-5-3 chords tend to behave that way, and we get that chain of falling fifths. So this is a leaping dissonance, is what I like to call this one, the 7-5-3 leaping dissonance. Let's go ahead and clear that off here. Now let's talk about the stepwise dissonances, which is to say the category of chords that come from the 6-3 chord. Just like I took a 5-3 chord and I could add a seventh onto it, make it a dissonance and force it to resolve, I can do the same to a 6-3 chord. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to transform. We learned about the T6-5 chord. See, it's a T6-3 chord, but I added that fifth in. And when I did so, that forces it to go up by step in the bass. I have no idea why oh, there it is. Randomly disappeared, came back to a do 5-3. The 6-5 steps up to a 5-3. You remember probably from the rule of the octave, the other place that it's common to have a 6-5 chord is, of course, on the fa. And the fa 6-5-3 is going to move up by step to the sol 5-3. Possibly decorated, you know, we might do a cadential 6/4 first. The sol 6/4 resolving to the sol 5/3. We just learned about the cadential 6/4s. But there it is. The 6/5/3 steps up to a 5/3, and that is a generalizable principle. That a 6/5/3 chord will generally resolve. Bass goes up by step up to a 5/3 chord. So if I decided I wanted to, let's say, stick on a, let's resolve to a La 5/3 chord. Would it be cool to put it in front of that and really make that stick up? Well, sol 6/5 there, and it will move up and step into that. Or even better, a C 6/5/3. That would be better than the sol even. The C. Now we're getting into chromatic harmony. We'll talk more about chromatic harmony in the fall, of course. But that 6/5/3 is going to resolve up by step to the La 5/3 there. That's what 6/5/3 chords do. Up by step to a 5/3 chord. All right, another category. I could take that 6/3, and this time instead of adding the 5 to it, let's add a 4 to it. Now we've got the 6/4/3, and you may remember we learned about the Re 6/4/3, and in the rule of the octave, of course, that usually goes down to a Do 5/3. I can also use it as a passing 6/4/3, of which the passing 6/4 chord is a subtype. And that was where we went, you know, like Do 5/3, passing up through Re 6/4/3 up to the Mi 6/3. Again, a generalizable principle here goes on. If I were to toss in the next most common 6/4/3 chord, probably the La 6/4/3, I already know what it's going to do. It's going to step down to a 5/3 chord. It's going to step down to a sol 5/3, with the possibility, a little bit less common, but the possibility of using it as a passing 6/4/3 chord, or, you know, again, a passing 6/4 chord just by not putting the 3 in. Passing 6/4s are probably more common than passing 6/4/3s. So what we're going to do is a generalizable principle here. The 6/5/3 resolves up by step to the 5/3. The 6/4/3 resolves down by step to a 5/3. And so we have these two variations on the chord of the 6/3. 6/3, of course, can go up or down. If you want to force your 6/3 chord to go up, make it a 6/5/3 chord. If you want to force your 6/3 chord to go down, make it a 6/4/3 chord, and it will naturally want to go down to that 5/3 chord there. Last category of standard seventh chords here is our 6/4/2 chord. Why are we trying to erase? 6/4/2. This is a cool chord, and it tends to show up in one of two different contexts. You've seen it before in the rule of the octave, where you had a sol 5/3 chord coming down Fa 6/4/2, and that passo and D8 thorsokas down from the Fa 6/4/2 to the Mi 6/3. Another common place to find the 6/4/2 is actually on a Do 6/4/2, believe it or not. And I could do a Do 5/3. If I move the other voices up by step, Bach does this in his prelude in C major. Then I end up with a Do 6/4/2, and that's going to want to resolve down to a T 6/3. Or 6/3 chords, I can do substitutions on them. I can make it a T 6/5, and it would have to come back up to the Do. That's what Bach does in his prelude in C major. He puts a 6/5 there, which forces it to go back up to the Do 5/3. If we'd gone down to T 6/3, we could keep going down, like our rule of the octave. You know, I could go down to like a La plus 6/4/3, down to the sol 5/3. And knowing how my figured bass works, I can harmonize a bass line just knowing where my stable points are and how things want to resolve to them. And the other variation then that we could do, get rid of that for now. Not all of it. There we go. We'll just erase the parts that I want to get rid of, just to say that part. The other thing that we could do is we could do it like the sol 5/3 does here. I could totally do a Do 5/3, keep the upper voices the same, step the bass down into a T642, and that would want to resolve down to a La 6-3. So what are we learning about here? 6-4-2s like to resolve down. The bass in a 6-4-2 always resolves down, step down. And unlike the 6-4-3, which resolved down to a 5-3, the 6-4-2 resolves down to a 6-3. And the 6-4-2 chord is a great thing to either do to a tied bass. You see here the bass stayed the same. And we learned about our tied bass in written theory, of course, with our partimental practice. Or the upper voices stay the same. And we have here a passing bass. Now, there are two varieties of 6-4-2 chords. The tied bass 6-4-2 and the passing bass 6-4-2. Some people just analyze the passing 6-4-2 as just a passing tone in the bass, or you can call it a 6-4-2 chord, whatever works best for you. Let's demonstrate the difference by putting in the voice leading above these really quickly. So I'm just going to make some room for this up here, I think. Over eraser. So let's look first at what happens if I'm doing the tied bass. Do 5-3, Do 6-4-2, resolving down to the T 6-3. Let's put in our voice leading above this so we can see how this particular thing works. We're going to find we'll start with a Mi in the top voice here, a Mi position, and then come down to Do and Sol like that, largely because that's what Bach does in his prelude. And what happens here is we can just step everything up. Mi, Fa, Do, Re, Sol, La. By doing that, the Do in the bass becomes a dissonance. This is our tied bass. And what was a consonant ties across becomes a dissonance. Ah, you recognize that 2-3 suspension is happening there, right there. That Re to Do, that Re is going to stay exactly the same, and that creates the 2-3 suspension underneath as our Do resolves down to T. So this is a suspension bass or tied bass. Tied bass equals a suspension in the bass. And then, of course, other things resolving as we expect. Sol, La. We love Sol, La, Sol. That's a great voice leading motion there. This is why Bach likes to go to a T6-5, because that lets him keep the Fa as a common tone here. Otherwise, I could step the Fa up to the Sol, double the Sol there. That would be a 6-3 would be the Sol. 6-5 would have the Fa. And of course, resolving back, if I wanted to resolve back to the Do 5-3, at the end, of course, the Sol stays the same. Our Sol or our Fa, if I have a 6 above the bass, it would want to drop down to the Sol, Mi, or Fa, Mi, and Re, Do. This is a nice little gesture here. And so that's what a tied 6-4-2 looks like. And of course, I can do a tied 6-4-2 pretty much anywhere, and it would want to resolve down to the 6-3. The other one is what we call the passing 6-4-2. The passive bass passes down. Let's look at what that looks like. Let's write a Do, T, La here, and we'll do a passing. I could go to a La 5-3. That would be anything to do. Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata, starts off with a Do 5-3. Let's do the Moonlight Sonata. Why not? It's in minor, not major, so instead of having a Do, Ti, La, we're going to go Do, Te, Le, and we start with a 5-3 here. We go to the passing 6-4-2, and because Beethoven passes down to a 5-3 chord, let's go ahead and pass down to a 5-3 chord. Kind of breaks our usual rule of 6-4-2 down to 6-3, but it's a color substitute, right? Usually I'd want to go down lay 6-3 to a Sol. None. Anyway, let's take a look at this one. Let's go Mi, Sol, Do. You notice nothing changes here. There's my 2, there's my 4, There's my 6. And so it's just this passing tone, really, that acts as a passing tone. I don't even necessarily need to consider that a chord change if I don't want to. I could think of it as just a passing tone, or I could think of it as a 4-2 chord. Either way works just fine. Of course, go to the lay 5-3. We keep our do as the 3rd there. The make it stays the same as the 5th. Sol to lay. Sol, lay, sol. And all our nice voice leading on top of that. We want to go down to lay 6-3, where we change up a 6 from lay is not may, but it would be fa. And then I'd have these 2 voices moving up parallel thirds here. And so general principle, 6-4-2 steps down to a 6-3. So just wrapping up our rules for 7th chords in general. Clear the canvas. In fact, how about our general chords in general? We have our chords of the consonances, right? 5-3, stable. 6-3, motion. And we have our chords of the dissonances. Kind of recapping our tonal harmony this semester, right? The 5-3 can be transformed into the 7-5-3, which is the leaping dissonance. And of course, the 7-5-3, the bass is going to leap. Up by 4th or down by 5th. Lands on another chord of the 5th. Our 6-3 chords turn into dissonances. We have our 6-5-3. It's our upward resolving dissonance, if you will, because our 6-5-3 resolves up by step in the bass to a 5-3, or our 6-4-3, or downward dissonance. Bass down by step to a 5-3 chord. And then we had our tied or passing 6-4-2. Often follows, it will follow a consonant chord, so it will follow a consonance, often a 5-3. We'll have our 6-4-2, and it will resolve down by step, usually to 6-3 chord. Unless somebody like Beethoven's doing a color substitute just to mess up our theory. Nobody follows all the rules all the time. These are general principles. And then what did we also learn about? We learned about our special category of 6-4 chords the other day. These are special types of dissonances. So I've got my dissonances of sevenths, and I've got my dissonant triads. These are both categories of dissonances. And we learned about the passing, pedal, and cadential 6-4 chords. So this would be like, for example, do, re, mi, passing in the bass, put a 6-4 there, works fantastic. Pedal, this is where we kept our bass the same and did this little neighbor motion. And our cadential takes place on in a cadence. Our cadential 6-4 resolving to a 5-3 or to a 7-5-3. You could always put the dissonance there. You would of course want to resolve back home to the do 5-3. And that's a deceptive cadence. And so these are our 7th chords then. We've got the leaping dissonance, the 7-5-3. We have the upward and downward stepping dissonances, all these resolving to the 5-3. We've got that special 6-4-2 that steps down to a 6-3. And of course we talked about our 6-4 chords the other day. So that's really tonal harmony, diatonic tonal harmony in a nutshell. It's going to be really easy to extend these principles to chromatic harmony in the fall. Oh, I guess before I wrap up, I need to give you some Roman numerals because we're stuck with Roman numerals. So quickly, let's clear this one more time and talk about the most common non-dominant 7th things here and give you Roman numerals for them. So I used as our example the Ray 753, which wants to resolve to Sol 753. This would be the 2, 7. Or in minor, because it has Re, Fa, Lay, it can either label as a half diminished 7th, or the jazz version of this, we think of that as a 2, 7 with a flat 5th on it. Either of those work well. Major, minor. We learned our Fa 653. This gets the Roman numeral 2, 6, 5, or in minor, 2, half diminished, 6, 5. I don't even know how we would write that in jazz harmony, honestly, because that flat 5 implies that the 5th above the bass is flat, but yeah, it gets awkward. I know how we write it in jazz. In jazz, we use lead sheet notation, so we don't even have to deal with Roman numeral crap in jazz. We would write this as, like, for example, say we're in C minor, we would write this as a D7 flat 5 over F in the bass. We just sidestepped the whole issue of Roman numerals and chord alterations, which is a serious flaw with Roman numerals, that the so-called inversions don't have any good way of writing them. If we're doing figure bass, we can cover everything. La 643. So 2, 6, 4, 3, or 2 half diminished, 6, 4, 3. And our last one, we had the Do 6, 4, 2. And this is, of course, our 2. Oh, abbreviations, because Roman numeral people abbreviate everything. 2, 4, 3, 2, 4, 2. So there's your Roman numeral translation. But honestly, I don't care for Roman numerals. It's an extra cognitive load that gives you no practical benefit whatsoever. Just remember how our dissonances like to resolve, and you'll be in good shape all the time. One last note on seventh chords in our last video of the semester, coming up in a moment.